Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, and your chancellor of cheerfulness. And lest we forget, your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, Rob casting at you imagination connoisseurs, you who make up this community of the Post-Geek Singularity. Now I have to tell you, before I get to the topic at hand, there was something that I heard from my friend Keith Sedor. He told me about a great controversy, something that after he told me what it was, I thought it was an incredible metaphor for maybe the state of the world. And I thought that I would share it. It's something that he told me about that he was thinking of. I guess it happened in 2013, and he actually wrote a letter about it. And I said, "Do you have that letter still?" And he did. And everyone who watches this show knows of my fondness for reading people's letters. This was something I felt that I needed to share with all of you, because I really feel that the connoisseurship, you imagination connoisseurs, that you would understand. You would get what Keith was trying to say, and you would understand the wider-ranging implications of all of it, about what it means to us personally, what it means to maybe America, perhaps the world. Perhaps the world. So without further ado, I would like to share this letter with all of you. Again, this was written by Keith Sedor, my friend Keith. I've done Star Trek podcasts. He does a Treksperts podcast, not the Inglorious Treksperts podcast, but a Treksperts podcast that I've participated in. I was on a recent episode of his. And when he told me about this, I knew that I would share it with you. So I want to thank him for, wait a minute, I got to wash these off. I want to thank him for digging this up and allowing me to share it. And I think when you hear what I'm about to share, you'll understand why I felt the need. Every year at Halloween, General Mills re-releases the monster cereals, Count Chocula, Frankenberry, and Boo Berry, for a limited time. This year, they've also resurrected two long-requested perennial favorites that have been retired from the lineup for decades. Fruit Brute, formerly Fruit, F-R-U-I-T, Brute, note the spelling change from fruit to fruit, and Fruity Yummy Mummy. Too much fanfare. Those of us who are children of the 80s and 70s even look forward to their annual appearance with great nostalgia and childlike delight as we seek to re-experience, ever so briefly, one of the joys of our childhood. But when we as adults taste one or all of our favorite monster cereals of yesteryear, the reaction is almost always the same. They don't taste like I remember them. I remember loving these as a kid. I guess my tastes have changed. I don't enjoy these like I did when I was younger. Most adults who have this experience upon tasting the modern-day incarnations of the monster cereals keep it to themselves and just forget about it. I cannot. I will not. It is my intention to cry foul, expose General Mills' deception in attempting to pass off these cheapened versions, and call upon them to restore the monster cereals to their original former glory. What is this deception I speak of? One simple word: corn. When the monster cereals were first introduced in the 1970s, the primary grain ingredient was oats, actually oat flour, creating a delicious cereal with a perfect texture for accompaniment by marshmallow bits. Think flavored versions of Lucky Charms. Regardless of which flavor was your favorite, the original oat-based versions had a texture, flavor, and mouthfeel that made the experience of eating these cereals nothing short of sublime. Fast forward to the 20th century, and General Mills has placed profit above quality and quietly altered the recipe, replacing the oat flour with a much cheaper, in both cost and quality, and more prolific grain: corn. The corn-based incarnations of the monster cereals taste nothing like their namesake from days gone by and only serve to sully the memory of the oat-based originals by having a texture not unlike shellacked styrofoam. General Mills' deception runs even deeper, as they also released the corn-based monster cereals this year in retro packaging from the 70s and 80s, available exclusively at Target. Now, while I absolutely love the concept of the limited edition retro boxes, they only serve to deepen the disappointment when the contents of the box are nothing like the classic box art conjures. And in a direct quote from the same press release bringing Fruit Brute and Fruity Yummy Mummy out of retirement this year, General Mills marketing manager for the Monster cereals, Ari Zainudin, is quoted as saying, "We chose the current flavors of Fruity Yummy Mummy and Fruit Brute to be as close as possible to the original flavors while taking into account consumers' preferences. Consumers can get a taste for what these cereals were like when they were originally on shelves." Nothing could be further from the truth. The original Fruit Brute, which ran from 1974 to 1984, and Fruity Yummy Mummy, which ran from 1987 to 1993, were both generically fruit-flavored cereals. General Mills obviously felt that re-releasing two cereals that had essentially the same flavor profile, though Fruity Yummy Mummy touted vanilla marshmallows, would be redundant, and relaunched the expansion monster cereals with completely different flavors, assigning cherry flavor to the reintroduced Fruit Brute and an orange vanilla cream flavor to Fruity Yummy Mummy. Now, I will say this. The two new flavor profiles of the reintroduced Fruit Brute and Fruity Yummy Mummy are actually pretty decent. Now, that having been said, the corn-based texture of the cereal component makes all 5 of the monster cereals completely inedible, and I trust that my fellow breakfast cereal aficionados will agree with my assessment. In the interim, I have discovered that until General Mills restores the oat-based formula to the monster cereals recipes, there are 2 somewhat plausible workarounds, one for Count Chocula and the other for Frankenberry. Another cereal company, Malto Meal, makes a competing product to Lucky Charms called Marshmallow Mateys. They have a chocolate version that, while partially corn-based, also contains enough oat flour to answer, though not completely resolve, the texture issue. This is as close to the flavor and texture of the original Count Chocula as one can presently get. An approximation of Frankenberry can be achieved by replacing the milk in the bowl of Lucky Charms with a bottle of strawberry Nesquik, which I'm sure the interns can procure for you. This can also be done for Count Chocula with Nesquik double chocolate milk. If you really want to simulate Count Chocula and Frankenberry, you could take these alternatives one step further by swapping out the marshmallows in the chocolate marshmallow mateys and Lucky Charms with their monster-shaped counterparts from boxes of Count Chocula and Frankenberry, but who has the time or the inclination? I am beyond disappointed in General Mills for their short-sightedness here. My children love Halloween and repeatedly ask me to buy the Halloween cereal when we go shopping, and I dejectedly want to know why I won't buy it for them. I can't, in good conscience, allow my children to think that this is what a quality cereal should taste like. Because never having experienced it in the 70s or 80s, she has nothing to compare it to. So not only can I not enjoy the monster cereals, I can't share the fun with my daughters either. My goal is simple: to motivate General Mills to eliminate the corn from the monster cereals and restore them to their former delicious oat-based glory. When he told me about this letter, I knew I had to read it, because I thought metaphorically it would help people understand some of the things that I talk about a lot on this show. And I'll leave that for you, my imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity, to figure out what that means. But I want to thank Keith Sedor for digging this letter up. Again, it was written in 2013, and thank you for allowing me to share it with you viewers on this episode number 440 of Robservations, the show about something. Now, to the topic at hand, everyone. So, yesterday was a day. Oh, it was a big day when it came to, for those of you who haven't been keeping score, yesterday the entire Hollywood, I just got to get into it. The news came fast and furious. It has not stopped either today. It is still coming in. So I'm gonna try and read all of these articles to you in order of how it all dropped, so you can hear it. And they're all from Deadline, which is the industry go-to paper. So yesterday, well, first of all, I got to set this up by saying on the John Campea show, John Campea and I have been speculating about the movie Tenet, Christopher Nolan's Tenet. And I said that if Warner Brothers was going to blink, we were going to find out by June 15th. They would push it. They would do all the marketing they could. But June 15th, they had to light this candle. Tenet was supposed to come, excuse me. Tenet was supposed to come out on July 17th. But I said if they wanted to move, they had to do it by June 15th. By the way, a total aside. So this sparkling water, AHA sparkling water, never had it before. I was walking through the grocery store the other day. It's black cherry sparkling water and coffee. It's caffeinated sparkling water with a coffee and black cherry flavor. And I don't know where AHA, I don't know if they listen to Take On Me too many times or what, but this is one delicious can of sparkling water. I just got to say, they're not sponsoring the show. It's just something new. So we were talking about whether or not Tenet was going to make it. Yesterday, Warner Brothers finally changed their plans. Not by much, but it began a ripple effect in their entire film schedule that has now sometimes, in certain cases, postponed movies for a year. Let's get into it, shall we? This article comes from Anthony D'Alessandro. Again, it dropped at 3:19 yesterday. And let's here we go. Tenet moves to July 31st, the 10th anniversary reissue of Christopher Nolan's Inception to go on July 17th. That was its date. Warner Brothers' Christopher Nolan movie Tenet officially is moving to July 31st, so it's only moving 2 weeks. Instead of July 17th, Warner Brothers Pictures is partnering with exhibitors to invite audiences around the world to the 10th anniversary re-release of Nolan's Inception, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hardy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ellen Page, and Marion Cotillard. That special anniversary theatrical event will also give audiences a never-before-seen look at footage from Tenet and an exclusive sneak peek of select films on Warner Brothers' upcoming slate. There's been a high degree of suspense and scrutiny in the media over the past month as to whether Tenet would move. This is a little bit of a nudge, nothing alarmingly drastic. A $200 million production like Tenet, which doesn't boast the starry cast that Inception did, needs the world to make bank and enough runway to promote. We heard that if Manhattan is closed and other boroughs are not, Tenet still could proceed. The other upside to Tenet's move is that major sports might be back by mid-July, but there aren't any hard dates. MLB and its players' unions remain stuck, not over safety issues, but prorated pay. The NHL training camps begin July 10th. NBA owners have voted for a July 31st restart of the season, but is waiting for the players to sign off on it. UFC, WWE, NASCAR, and Pro Golf are already back. The longer lead for Tenet also gives IMAX some time to finalize its prints. The news of Tenet's move comes at a time when New York City has yet to announce reopening plans for movie theaters, which remain stuck in Phase 4 next to Broadway theaters. NATO New York is involved in talks with state officials to get cinemas moved into Phase 3. There's that, along with the fact that mega box office market China and notable other offshore markets haven't reopened yet. It's a chicken and egg scenario. Movie theaters won't open without major studio product, and major studio product won't be distributed unless theaters are open. But the go-ahead to reopen comes back to state, county, and local governments. I'm hearing no movement yet for Disney's Mulan, still scheduled for July 24th, but it wouldn't be shocking if it moved a little later in the calendar. We heard this week from Solstice Studios that Unhinged, the Russell Crowe film, would stick on its July 1st opening date with or without New York City even with Tenet's move to July 31st. But they just changed their minds and moved the Russell Crowe Road Rage movie to July 10th. That's the same weekend as Sony TriStar's Selena Gomez executive produced romantic comedy, The Broken Hearts Gallery, currently on July 31st, the same weekend as Tenet. Styx has the Gerald Butler movie Greenland. Tenet's move today also prodded Warner Brothers to push Wonder Woman 1984 from August 14th to October 2nd. Well, that started. And then we go from 3:19 to 4:06 p.m. Anthony DeSandro says Wonder Woman 84 jumps to October following Tenet summer shift. Wonder Woman 84 is flying from August 14th to October 2nd this year. The sequel's star, Gal Gadot, also made the news official on Twitter today. All of this comes in the immediate wake of Warner Brothers shifting Christopher Nolan's Tenet from July 17th to July 31st. Tenet is anticipated to be the big event movie for exhibition as they come out of COVID-19. Warner Brothers is going with the 10th anniversary re-release of Nolan's Inception instead on July 17th. The movie stems from New York City not officially reopening their theaters yet, as well as other offshore territories. With Disney's One and Only Ivan and Wonder Woman 84 off August 14th, that leaves the weekend up for grabs. Mulan move, anyone? If that movie wanted to still go on July 24th, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary. Disney has already built up the Pix brand with extensive advertising earlier this year. Many in distribution circles have told me that whenever Disney wants Mulan to go, they just need to flick a switch. Warner Brothers made golden the first weekend in October last year with the biggest opening ever for the month with DC's The Joker, which debuted to $96.2 million. Wonder Woman 84 is apt to stir up more release date changes. Paramount has their Tom Clancy feature Without Remorse, starring Michael B. Jordan. That's a Tom Clancy adaptation I can't wait to see. Universal also has the Amblin Tom Hanks movie BIOS. What a mess of year for big studio marketing. So that dropped. Then yesterday at 4:59, so we're talking now a bit like 90 minutes. This is 90 minutes of time. Here's some big more news. It just won't stop. Again, Anthony D'Alessandro. This comes in at 4:59 yesterday, which is just, what is it? 100 minutes since the first Tenet news broke. 100 minutes later. It just won't stop. Warner Brothers is in the wake of moving Tenet from July 17th to July 31st, and Wonder Woman 84 from August 14th to October 2nd has shifted a number of its movies on the 2020 schedule to deeper in the calendar. Matrix 4, which currently is paused production in Berlin but might restart next month, goes from May 21st, 2021 to, get this, April 1st, 2022. 11 months later. Pick is a co-production with Village Roadshow, which has been the co-financer of the Matrix trilogy. Warner had the latter date on hold, and it's the weekend after Disney opens Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness on March 25th. Legendary's Godzilla vs. Kong no longer will go on November 20th of this year. Instead, will take over Matrix 4's original May 21st, 2021 date. So Kong, which has already been moved, is moving from November 20th of this year to May 21st, 2021. Lionsgate currently has Spiral, its Saw reboot starring Chris Rock and Sam Jackson, on that date. Robert Zemeckis' feature adaptation of Roald Dahl's The Witches is now unset in 2021 for the time being, no longer going on October 9th. The Witches leaves behind 20th Century Studios' Kenneth Branagh movie Death on the Nile, and Paramount's expansion of Aaron Sorkin's The Trial of the Chicago 7. Warner Brothers cartoon hybrid Tom and Jerry moves off December 23rd and heads to March 5th, 2021. Warner Brothers had the latter date RSVP'd, where Sony's Ghostbusters Afterlife sits next to an untitled Universal event movie. Meanwhile, New Line is scheduling an untitled horror movie for June 4th, 2021, opposite Paramount's Micronauts, Sony's Vivo, and MGM's Sylvester Stallone movie Samaritan. And Warner's is taking an untitled event movie off October 16th of this year. So, wow. And it just keeps going. An hour and a half later, last night, Anthony D'Alessandro reports that. Now, here's a movie that isn't completely moving off the schedule after Warner Brothers exploded the release calendar today with its Tenet and Wonder Woman 84 release date change. United Artists releasing is going a week earlier with Orion's threequel Bill and Ted Face the Music, now on August 14th, the date Wonder Woman previously occupied. The Keanu Reeves Alex Winter reteam was set to open on August 21st. Dean Parasol directs off a script from Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon. Bill and Ted Face the Music, which dropped a trailer this week, will open against Jared Butler's action movie Greenland, which moved on to August 14th today after Wonder Woman 84 moved to October 2nd. So, more news. And And then, this one dropped at 8:45 p.m. last night. It's by someone else, Bruce Herring. We all know how important the Chinese market is to Hollywood. Beijing cancels plans to reopen movie theaters, nixes sports events after new COVID-19 cases emerged. Beijing health officials are pulling back from plans to widen the reopening of businesses in the city, including movie theaters, according to a China news website. SupChina.com reports that 3 new coronavirus cases in the past 2 days have spooked authorities, causing them to reinstate social distancing rules and reversing decisions on reopening businesses. Three new coronavirus cases have caused this. If anyone's paying attention, look at how many corona cases were diagnosed yesterday in the U.S. As a result, indoor entertainment venues, including movie theaters and karaoke rooms, will remain closed until further notice. Likewise, all sporting events are on hold, and schools that were to reopen Monday will no longer welcome back students. 3 cases. 6 wholesale markets visited by the afflicted patients were also ordered closed, and group meals in restaurants are banned. The new cases first appeared on Thursday after no new cases for nearly 2 months. One patient, described as a 52-year-old man, didn't leave the city and wasn't in recent contact with anyone who had traveled overseas. He checked into a hospital on Wednesday with a fever. A day later, 2 more infected people surfaced. The patients were co-workers at a meat research center and also had no recent contact with anyone who had traveled overseas. However, one of them traveled to the eastern city of Qingdao for a 5-day business trip before falling ill. Fearing a second wave of infections, Chinese officials have come down hard, closing off communities where the new infected lived. Residents there are also subject to temperature checks, and authorities are working to disinfect public locations and implement a track and trace program. The crackdown comes after Beijing scrapped a mandatory maybe it was scrapped, there's no R in this letter, but maybe it's scrapped. After Beijing scrapped a mandatory 14-day quarantine for travelers arriving from other parts of China. The city also allowed most businesses to reopen. Again, that was from last night. Let's see. And also, I forgot. I got to jump back in time. Anthony D'Alessandro, between 2 of those stories, the Tom Hanks sci-fi movie BIOS moves to 2021. Universal Amblin's BIOS is the first to move off October 2nd after Warner Brothers plopped Wonder Woman 84 on that new date, and will now go to April 16th, 2021. Universal already had April 16th on hold with an untitled event movie. Already on that date is the Warner Brothers Lisa Joy-directed sci-fi film Reminiscence, which stars Hugh Jackman, Tandy Newton, and Rebecca Ferguson. BIOS' departure from October 2nd leaves Paramount's Tom Clancy movie Without Remorse standing next to Wonder Woman 1984. With New York theaters and some prime offshore territories not really open yet, Warner Brothers made some seismic release dates changes, which has everyone jumping in response. That began for Tenet, which was the event movie primed to get the summer season started, going from July 17th to July 31st. So Tom Hanks has moved. This morning, No Time to Die moved. Again, Anthony D'Alessandro at a little less than an hour and a half ago says No Time to Die going earlier in November, with Warner Brothers' Legendary's Godzilla vs. Kong stomping away from November 20th. MGM's 007 feature No Time to Die will take over that slot in the States. No Time to Die is also going earlier in the UK on November 12th. News broke on social media this morning. Deadline was the first to report that due to COVID-19 and the shutdown of theaters in China at that point in time, early back in March, that No Time to Die was moving off its Easter weekend launch pad of April 10th and heading to November 25th, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Wouldn't be surprised if Disney Pixar's Soul takes over Bond's old slot stateside on November 25th, even though that movie is on November 20th. Disney has typically launched their Thanksgiving stretch event picks over the 5-day period, with the exception of last year when they took Frozen 2 out the weekend before Turkey Day, making 130.2 million stateside. So, with this, and that's the end of all this reporting. Wow. Now, if China has another outbreak or a second wave of infections, you can probably expect all of this to go away again. We'll have to see. If the United States, since we've been opening, the COVID cases have been going up. So it'll be interesting to see how, I don't think the United States would handle it very well if businesses were closed, but it's really going to be interesting to see how all of this is dealt with in the world. And as far as movies go, I want to get back to I want to go to a movie so damn bad. I really do. And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. And now, before I get to your first letters, I want to remind all of you that on Tuesday, The Hills Run Red, a movie that I produced, comes out on Blu-ray for the very first time from Scream Factory. And as you all know, Dave Parker, director Dave Parker, and myself, during this period of quarantine, we created 6.5 hours of new special features for this disc that cover every facet of how an independent horror movie goes from being independent to going to a studio. And of course, our executive producer, Joel Silver, who does not appear on the disc, was our executive producer. So that was pretty exciting. And again, available from Scream Factory. I want to thank them for putting the movie out. Eternally grateful. We wondered, do people hate our movie that much? Is that why it's not on Blu-ray? So it's been a long road getting from here to there. But yes, The Hills Run Red finally on Blu-ray, and it looks gorgeous. As a matter of fact, here it is right here. So director Dave Parker and I are going to meet tomorrow with masks on, of course, and we're going to sign a few that are going to be available through Dark Delicacies. So if you're interested in getting one, you can contact Dark Delicacies here in Los Angeles and tell them that Robert Burnett sent you. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That and gentle beings and kind people and everybody who populates the 28 known galaxies. I'm going to jump into some letters because you know I got them. I got letters, and I've appreciated all of you sending me letters, which is fantastic. I'm just going to jump in. This one comes from Aaron Johnson. Dear Rob, I know this was brought up on John's channel before, but as an imagination connoisseur, I thought this would be a good topic for your channel. The topic is about how anyone can get started building a channel on YouTube, whether it be for film and geekdom talk like many channels I enjoy, including yours and John's, or that of tech channels, gaming channels, or even animation blogs like with Alex Clark, where someone talks to the audience to introduce the segment and it cuts to an animated cartoon. The effort new YouTubers would make when building a channel typically includes having the proper team, similar to how a classic TV show and like Almost Live would have writers, producers, producers, directors, etc. What these YouTube channels demonstrate respectfully is that people can support each other, and in John's case, what made it forward thinking is his great advice about how to start a channel, and I was curious about what your advice on how to start a channel would be. This topic can be advice on how to start a YouTube channel and what people typically enjoy. Sincerely, Aaron Johnson. Aaron, a good question. I mean, you know, as many people know, I did not have YouTube aspirations. I started on YouTube in April of 2015 when the late, great John Schnepp asked me to be on episode 6 of what was then AMC's Heroes. It was even before Collider was just a website done by my friend Frosty, and had been going on for a long time, but the show wasn't a part of Collider yet. So I went on the show, and I worked with John Schnepp and John Campea. I mean, people forget I've been working with John Campea in the YouTube space since the first day I was on YouTube myself in 2015. And I didn't know much about it, and I didn't, I was on Collider Heroes, AMC Heroes became Collider Heroes, and I was on for 3.5 years, and I never even considered myself a YouTuber. I would show up, because, if you're not, I wasn't really paying much attention. I mean, I watched YouTube for movie trailers, but I didn't watch a lot of content on YouTube. But after 3.5 years, I started to watch clips and subscribing to channels, and they would show up in my feed. And I subscribed to a wide variety of geeky channels. And I watched a lot of people. Like, I didn't skip, or I didn't stay in any one space. I mean, I watched things like, Midnight's Edge was doing Star Trek videos, and sometimes Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers would pop up. And then I would watch Genic, who I don't know. He's my favorite YouTube. He paints Gundam models. He's one of the best airbrushers I've ever seen. I would watch his channel and other people. So then, as I would go through and subscribe, the gamut. I watched Chris Stuckman. I started watching his reviews. I really like Chris Stuckman. I liked his reviews. I don't think I ever met him when I was at Collider, but I really like his channel. Jeremy Johns, who I had known from Collider, I met there. I watched a lot of Jeremy Johns. Just lots of different channels. But in terms of what does it take to start a YouTube channel, I guess you just turn on a camera and start talking. I didn't really know when I started my channel. I mean, I knew I was going to call it Robservations. And there's other people, by the way, that had that name before in different spaces. Rob Liefeld, people like, Rob Liefeld's using Robservations, but he did have a column in Wizard magazine in the 90s. So as I've said on my show a number of times, I really like Rob Liefeld. I've always liked Rob Liefeld. As a matter of fact, he's very funny, like in person. He's a blast to hang out with. So I don't harbor any ill will. I think there's a lot of room in the Robservations pool, and the water's warm, so jump on in, right? I didn't know when I started talking. I mean, Elizabeth bought me this microphone, and she's like, and John Schnepp used to encourage me, start your own channel because your perspective is sort of unique. Here's what I would say, my advice, such as it is. If you want to be on YouTube, it's important to have a voice. You need to have, what is your thing? What can you do that's different from anybody else in that space? And if you want to say review movies, well, that's great, but you got to put your own spin on it. What's your take? And I think it's important for you to make it your own, because after all, when you're on YouTube, people are tuning into you because of you or what your perspective is. Like, there are people that, like, for instance, one of my favorite YouTube channels is The Critical Drinker. And first of all, and again, he's playing a character. I go all the way back to Red Letter Media. My God, do I love Red Letter Media. I really, really do. And I became fans of theirs when they did their Generations review. That's the first time I saw them, and then I followed them as they did their subsequent next gen reviews. Another YouTuber I really liked, and I know he's still doing it, but like 10 years ago, Cinemassacre's Monster Madness Godzilla-thon. Cinemassacre is a channel, and they reviewed all of the Godzilla movies. And I swear to God, the review you can still go and find these on YouTube. Cinemassacre's Monster Madness Godzilla-thon. Their review of Godzilla versus Destoroyah, and the way I mean, I don't know why his reviews appealed to me at the time. They just did. I mean, they seem to me like, okay, this guy and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay, because he was approaching the Godzilla movies with reverence, but also you understand they're still Godzilla movies, and a lot of people don't understand. I thought he did. So all of the YouTube channels that I watched, And now I've discovered this woman. I think she's Korean. Her channel, Frosted Snow. And again, she's a master Gundam modeler, and she does a lot of show. Well, first of all, she goes to these Gundam model stores, and it just makes me salivate. But she does a lot of like painting tutorials, and I find that she did a really good one about the different kinds of paint, whether you're using acrylics or enamels. Again, I really like that channel. So you've got to do something that's uniquely yours, and make it yours. And then, you know, I'm not saying now that if I was like John Campea spends a lot of money buying the best equipment he can. He's constantly upgrading. He's constantly doing things. And if I had that kind of money, I would do the same thing. I think having decent microphones, I have a condenser mic here, but I would use a different mic. Like I'd get one of those Shure mics or something. I use what I can. You should try and make it as technically proficient as possible. Make your YouTube channel sound good and look good as you can, and use some decent software. There's a lot of softwares out there. I use Wirecast because I learned from John. So, but my advice to anybody who wants to start a YouTube channel is have your own thing. Do your own thing. You know, make it your own, and be true to yourself. So that's what I would say. And thanks for writing in. Brian Eng is here. Brian, how are you? Hi, Rob. What are your thoughts when your side of the aisle edits out the Confederate flag from the roof of the General Lee in Dukes of Hazzard? Maybe they'll even edit out the name Lee, and the car will just be called the General. I'm sure you'll expand on this and give us your thoughts on the Confederate flag as a whole. Be careful, Rob. Some of your fans are Southerners who love the stars and bars. Brian, you're like Kirk. He tasks me. I'm Khan. He tasks me, and I shall have him. Look, I am against censorship, pretty much full stop. I honestly believe that we accomplish nothing by trying to erase problematic things from the past. I don't understand it. And as I've said on the show before, go back far enough, and every human being, we have been terrible to each other for the last 100,000 years. We do not have a good track record. There's one thing human beings are really good at, and we've proved that time and time again throughout these centuries, throughout the millennia, is that nobody can treat human beings worse than other human beings. And I think, going back, what does that say? I mean, you can't erase the past. You can't say that, oh, well, there was never a Confederacy, and they never had, well, that flag isn't the Confederate flag. It's actually some of the Army of Virginia's flag. Or I don't know exactly. I'm not a history buff. I don't know. But I mean, our history is our history, and you can't deny that. Now, what I think it's important to do is you move forward and you place that history in a context so people can look back and go, yeah, we shouldn't have done that. But going back and trying to edit things, because it doesn't stop there. In your idea of, you know, I heard a term today that I'd never heard before called victim cool. Like now we live in this victim cool, along with social justice warriors, we live in this victim cool society. And I thought that was interesting. Well, how far does that extend? What are you going to get rid of? Are you going to then go back and everything that's problematic? Like, where do you stop and go, oh, no, we're only going to stop there? But when do you go back? And somebody said to me, they're like, I'm surprised nobody went after Louis Malley's movie Pretty Baby or whatever with Brooke Shields, underage. Or why not go after Lolita for what it says? I mean, it's already people have taken me to task for the Schmodown for having a team called the Burning Droogs. People like that you should never have called your team that. And look, you can victim cool our civilization into I don't know what. We all need to be smarter and better. That's what we need. And I don't think that going out and editing and taking away every problematic representation in the past is something that we should do. Like, here's what I do find really interesting. I'm Jewish, and when I was growing up, I met lots of people with green tattoos on their wrists of numbers. I met actual Holocaust survivors. But no one ever said, you know what, we can't use Nazis in Raiders of the Lost Ark that way. I mean, it's all very interesting. Like I don't understand this desire to go back and get rid of things that are problematic from our past. The entirety of our, like I said before on this channel, the entirety of human history is problematic. I mean, when was the last time anybody, as a civilization, that we were good to one another? And why is the water in Flint, Michigan not clean yet? And I think that what we need to do is explain and let people know why these things were bad. That's why I think, okay, taking away Gone with the Wind for a while so they can figure out how to reframe it and come back and say, this is why this movie is problematic. It is a product of its time. It's an 80-year-old movie. You know, I mean, it's closing in on its 100 years old. And if you go back, I mean, what are you going to do to Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn? Take out all the bad language in those books? I mean, when does it end? And who's the arbiter of what's good and what's bad? And why are they qualified to do that? And I just think it's a very, very dangerous and it's a very slippery slope. And I think we have to be very careful moving forward how we're going to handle these things. Otherwise, we're going to be in a world of hurt. And I don't think I'm necessarily qualified. I can say that I don't believe in censorship. I don't believe in censorship, especially because of art. What did Hitler do? He went after what he called degenerate art. I mean, it's scary. Calvin Bowes is writing in and says, "Hi Rob, I'm writing this letter to you to show the real price of this cancel culture and how it actually hurts the ones you're trying to protect. In 1950s, on TV, there was a show called Amos and Andy. For those of you who do not know, this was the first show on TV to have an all-black cast. It was also the first studio show to allow a desegregated audience to attend the tapings of the show. The show was based on a radio program that had white actors voicing the black characters in stereotyping ways. When it went to TV, the producers went against that and hired black actors to play the characters. Now it's true, some of the characters were portrayed as dumb, but the show was also groundbreaking. If Andy got a ticket, it was a black cop who gave it to him. If he went before the judge to argue his case, it was a black judge. Imagine a child at that time seeing a person of color on TV in that kind of a position. Now, after 2 years on the air, the NAACP came against the series and it got taken off the air at the time because the show was, even though the show's number 15 in the ratings. As you can see, the network did this only because of one group. Well, not just one group, but I mean, the NAACP would be the only group to comment, so I can understand why. This is what happened because of the black actors say they're trying to protect their work now, and it's not like there were a lot of jobs for black actors in 1954. The show did go into syndication, but only until 1966, when the NAACP fought it to get permanently removed from syndication. And what resulted was that most of the actors in the show never worked again. Walk down a walk of fame and you'll see the stars of the white actors who played Amos and Andy, but not the black ones. And the groups say they did it to protect them, and all they did was really hurt them. And their history is gone. Now today we want to cancel Gone with the Wind because of problematic themes. Well, let's look what happens if you succeed. Future audiences will never get to see a performance of the first black woman to win an Oscar. Is that truly what we want? Interesting letter, Calvin. I mean, I think, look, again, even in the 50s, there were Jim Crow laws. People were still being lynched, and I think that during the time, it was the right thing to do. I think it was the right thing to do. But again, this is above my pay grade. I can only say that we should know these things historically. Whether they're good for people, I don't know. But I do think that we can't erase the past. We can't erase what we've already done. And let's talk about these things and explain. Like, I don't think people really understand. I certainly don't. Why I've often said on this show, I've talked about the fact that what we really don't understand is people's experiences, their day-to-day experiences of what it means when someone's different and what they have to put up with. And until you really understand, and I don't think, look, I don't understand a lot of what any of my friends go through. When I see them or talk to them, we're usually talking about great things, or we're talking about movies, or I don't sit there and go, hey man, I mean, how's your home life? Is everything okay? We don't know so much about one another. And the only way we're going to know about people's experiences is if they share their experiences and know that their experiences are going to be listened to and heard. They won't fall on deaf ears. I think that's very, very important. And America has spent a long time. There's a lot of deaf ears out there. And one of the things that this entire experience over the last, that what we've seen over the last couple months is now finally, there's a lot of people who are finally being heard. I mean, one of the benefits of social media is images, well, unless you're watching Fox News, where they doctor images, but when you're watching an uncut video of someone being straight up murdered, there's no way you can go with that. And I think that's one of the benefits of social media. Finally, people that didn't really understand, not really, have images that you cannot no longer deny. And I would like to think that that's, by the way, that's going away too. We don't even have proper things in place where we're protecting these images that we so desperately need. These images, the reasons why there's these flashpoints, we're moving into a realm where anything can be faked, and it's scary. It's very scary, and we all just look. We all need to do better and listen to one another, and don't pretend you understand everything. On the flip side, living in a victim cool world isn't great either. So again, I don't know. Omar94 writes in and says, "Hi Rob, here's another letter I have on movies with huge plot holes." Oh no. So here we go. The first movie is Titanic. There's a main problem people have with it, about how both Jack and Rose can fit on that float, which is true. And there's a number of anachronisms and historical inaccuracies, but the big plot hole I'm talking about comes from its narrative structure. The events of what happened are told by Rose narrating. That's the problem, as there are a lot of scenes which Rose did not witness, but we saw them happen. How would she know about all of those events and what those characters are doing? In storytelling, if a character is narrating an event he or she went through, it would make sense the whole backstory is told with him or her in all the scenes, since it was the narrator's point of view. James Cameron should have either reworked the backstory so Rose was there to witness all of what we saw happen, or got rid of all the modern-day stuff with the deep-sea exploration and made an epic period piece disaster movie all set in the past without narration. Well, Omar, I mean, there is artistic license, and you could say that Rose had heard these things from other people. We just saw that happen off screen. I mean, I know what you're saying. And it's definitely something you should take into consideration when you're doing narration and all of that. But I think you could explain some of it. The second movie is Disney's Aladdin from 1992, and I guess the 2019 remake as well. The huge plot hole comes from Jafar. The events in the movie wouldn't even have to happen if Jafar just used his brain. He wants to be sullen and tries doing so by getting the magic lamp. However, it doesn't occur to him he can just use his snake staff instead to mind control people like he did with the Sultan. He could have just used the staff from the very beginning to become the new Sultan. He wouldn't have to meet Aladdin and go to the Cave of Wonders. He also could have mind controlled Jasmine to marry him if he wanted. Those are some of the movies I thought that had large plot holes in them. I will send another letter on other movies with large plot holes at some point down the line. Well, I want to thank you for that, Omar. Look, there are movies do this a lot, and like in real life, it's easy in hindsight to be like, man, I should have done that. If only I'd done that, then I could, why did I do that? So I just chalk it up to the way people were thinking at the time. Jafar he just didn't think of it. And we've watched the movie so many millions of times that we can sit there and go, he should have done this at that point, but he didn't. Look, I still don't understand why Nero in Star Trek '09 the guy goes back in time. He's pissed off because his homeworld was destroyed in a supernova. And once he talked to Captain Rabaul of the Kelvin and figured out he was back in time and that they didn't know where Spock was, rather than get mad at Captain Rabaul, they should have said, like, wow, we went back in time. Let's go to the Romulan homeworld and remind everybody warn everybody that 90 years from now, the Hobus star is going to go supernova and kill everyone. Nope. But he doesn't do that. The very thing that he's mad about, he could prevent, but he'd rather be mad, bad, dangerous to know, and go off and destroy Vulcan. Why would you do that? If you travel back in time, did he not see, there must have been the Romulan equivalent of Back to the Future, or Somewhere in Time, or something. I mean, obviously, time travel has to be pondered by just about everyone because it's a normal impulse. I wish I could go change something that I did. But he doesn't. And I watched Star Trek 09, and I'm like, this movie has the single dumbest villain in all of sci-fi movie history. Why don't you go back in time and save the problem? Nobody thought of that? They never saw it. I mean, obviously, the movie wouldn't be that way if they did. But they already went down that path. But you'd think somebody would say, But no. Nope. You just got to go with it. That's why I don't watch Star Trek 09 very much. I can't deal with the stupidity. This one comes from Kevin Galt. Rob, the movies that have not been released or exhibited set in the present day are dating very fast. The studios will have to just burn them off in PPV, pay-per-view, or release them directly to the main platforms. They might try and sneak some lemons into theatrical release for a movie-starved public. If they save them much longer, they will immediately be identified as coming from the past. They will look quaint very fast. Do you know what some of the unreleased movies are and what we can expect to see? Please excuse me if you've done this or heard about this before, but I was thinking of a good topic that I'd like to see you cover. Thanks, Kevin. Well, Kevin, I think I did cover it. I guess there's still, like, Spike Lee's new film, Da 5 Bloods, came out on Netflix. Everyone says it's like a masterpiece. I can't wait to see it. Probably going to watch it tonight. Yeah, it's I don't know what they're going to do. It's so strange. I mean, now these movies, things that are finished, whether it's Fast 9, I hope they decide not to take Han Solo out of the movie. Soul, like the city Soul. I love Han, as everyone knows, justice for Han, but I mean that movie gets pushed a year. It's gonna seem strange, but I don't think it's something to really worry about. I still think the movies will stand on their own, but we'll see. But it's an interesting notion, interesting thing to consider. So, yeah. Let's see what's going down here. This letter comes from our man Jeffrey Mao. And here we go. Jeffrey Mao says, hang on, I should take a little swig here. Jeff says, I wanted to write you about something that I've thought a lot about for a while. I don't even have a name for it. Maybe we can come up with it. I suppose the most obvious film series that fits the bill of what I've been thinking about would be the Scream series. This movie features the characters who constantly talk about or reference horror movies, specifically slasher movies, and are influenced by them. Of course, the series is pretty tongue-in-cheek, or on the nose, if you will, about the references, where it gets to the point of self-parody towards the end. The movies go out of their way to say, hey guys, look, we're talking about slasher films, and guess what? We're in a real one. It got to the point where in a later installment, the film is set during the filming of a film based on the events of the first film. How many times did I write the word film there? So, I guess this concept might be called self-referentialism? I'm not sure. I think it's a good name for it, by the way. However, I wish that entertainment, specifically films, would try and explore this idea a little more, and not in an obvious or campy way, but just realistically. I often feel that many genre filmmakers try to steer away from humanizing their make-believe worlds too much by trying to avoid too many pop culture references, because I think it potentially brings up a lot of issues, or take the viewer out of the film. But instead of avoiding them, I'd like to see them try to handle it with a straight face. So, for example, Star Wars gets referenced a lot in movies, probably more so than any other franchise. It's a pretty safe bet. It's pretty safe. It's a pretty safe one to mention, right? Because it exists in a fantasy setting. So just about any film set in a world that more or less resembles ours has Star Wars. So in a world where Marvel superheroes are real, what did kids read? Did they read comics? They read Tales of the Black Freighter. Did they read comics? If so, what were they about? Does Superman exist in the MCU? Do Marvel comics exist in the Man of Steel Superman universe? In the MCU, were Star Wars comics published by Marvel? Let's look at another genre that I think about a lot, which is the giant monster kaiju genre. So, in the universes of Godzilla films, obviously Godzilla does not exist. But surely there would have been a version or two similar to him. The 2014 Godzilla got close by showing the young Ford Brady have some kind of kaiju toys in a poster. Obviously a reference to his world having something like Godzilla, but I wish at some point or another some kid would say, wow, a real-life monster just like fill in the blank. We get Ford's son watching the Godzilla Muto fight on TV and telling his mom that they're dinosaurs. But wouldn't it have been cooler if he said, look, mommy, it's blah, blah, blah from blah, blah, blah? Because if a Godzilla-like monster really did land in the USA, wouldn't the first thing every kid would say, that's a real-life Godzilla? Wouldn't that even be what the news would report? I'd rather see a news report in a Godzilla movie saying that Godzilla was like a real-life version of whatever their version of Godzilla is, and not bother to explain who that is because everyone in the film would know that. I think that audiences would appreciate that extra level of authenticity. For example, in Shin Godzilla, which is as serious as a heart attack and totally avoids anything close to this, wouldn't someone in any of these government meetings have mentioned how Godzilla is like whatever Daikaiju exists in their world? Because, come on, you can't tell me in that 60 years someone in the Shin Godzilla universe wouldn't have made a giant monster film or two in Japan. You cannot seriously tell me that wouldn't happen. Just have them casually mention it, because everyone would know the reference and just make it seem completely natural, because it would be natural for any one of us to make that reference. However, I feel that screenwriters just wouldn't be able to restrain themselves and not handle it with any kind of tact or subtlety, because there are always cliched things that screenwriters want to drop into movies that no one ever says in real life, such as one character saying to another, "This isn't a movie, this is real life." God, I hate it when they do that. But just one time, I wish someone would just drop a line in a movie where the characters refer to a movie that resembles the situation they're in. Like, why can't someone in The Meg just drop a line referring to Jaws, or even just hum the music? Because if you and I were facing down a giant shark, wouldn't we do that? Quote a few lines from the film even? I don't know, Rob. Maybe I'm just too much of a realist when it comes to films. No, you are not, sir. But you're not the viceroy of verisimilitude either. Like whenever you say a film set in a film, they always end up shooting a scene as if it was the actual full edited scene and not like how it actually would be done on a real film set. That's one of my pet peeves of life. Okay, I get it. It wouldn't be as exciting, but it would still be more realistic. Okay, I'll end it here because I think I'm starting to go off on a different letter that is also about something I've been thinking about for a long time. Yes, I do have a lot of things that I think about for a long time, but damn if the Post-Geek Singularity isn't the best place to share them. Until the next letter, Jeff. I gotta say, Jeff, first of all, great letter. Dude, I feel you. Because I think about this all the time. And I'll tell you something. In case anyone doesn't know, I produced a movie called The Hills Run Red that comes out on Tuesday on Blu-ray from Scream Factory. But the reason I bring that up again is in The Hills Run Red, the two protagonists, the male protagonists, are huge fans of horror movies. And in the original script that we were given before we reworked it, it was all full of real horror references. And then the characters find themselves in essentially their own horror movie. So the question is, do we go and use all of these real horror movies? Or as we did, there's a guy named Stephen Romano who did a whole book of movie posters and art for films that don't actually exist. You think they do. You look at their beautiful artwork, exploitation posters, but they're all movies that are fake. He made them up. So we thought, okay, director Dave Parker was like, you know what, we could get Stephen Romano's movies, and while they're redolent of movies that really exist, in the universe of our movie, the horror movies that everybody knows don't exist because it's an alternate universe. And it becomes a thing. So it's not a big part of our movie, but if you look in the background, there's all of these. We made, the art department made posters. We had to go, first of all, we had to get Stephen Romano to sign off. He was happy to do it. But that was a big question we had when we were making the film, because also, you know, our movie is what it is. We didn't want to remind our audience that, oh, look at all these other better movies that are out there. Not that I don't think that's I like our movie. I think it does what we set out to do. But it was a very interesting question. And I think you're absolutely right. Have the characters in these movies, in the universe that they live in, within the movie that we're watching, do those things exist? I think the question about Marvel Comics characters, I think they actually dealt with it, though. I think at one point, didn't they show, like, once the Avengers were real, all you have to do, then, of course, they would be making Avengers comics. Now, would they be authorized? Would the Avengers allow that to happen? I don't know. I wouldn't imagine that Nick Fury would be too keen on signing a licensing deal for the Avengers, but Tony Stark might. He might handle all of that. As a matter of fact, what's really interesting is if you look at how they handled those things in Watchmen, even in Alan Moore's comics, Ozymandias made action figures of all the Watchmen and sold them. You know, you see them in the comic, you see them in the movie, and I guess why not? But in the Watchmen comic, obviously, there weren't superhero comics before, and that's why there were pirate comics, like the Tales of the Black Freighter comics. So I think it's a very interesting question. And you have to ask yourself, like, when it comes to verisimilitude, this is why I think about it all the time, the reality, the believability of it. And I find that, like, your point is well taken in a Godzilla movie, when creatures like Godzilla exist. I mean, in Shin Godzilla, they make it seem like it's the first one they've ever seen. But if you're talking about a movie where stuff already does exist, how would they deal with those things? It's a very, very interesting question. I mean, what do you guys think? I'm curious as to how do you guys all feel about it? It's a really fun question to contemplate that I think only imagination connoisseurs grapple with, but it's definitely interesting. I think it's a great question, man. Great question. Let me jump over and see what you're all saying in the live chat-a-rooney here. What are you guys saying with the questions you're firing into me? Easter Island Throg says, "Dum-dum, you give me gum-gum. In our need to censor ourselves, first film that has to go is Goldmember. Austin Powers Goldmember. I still can't believe I paid night prices for that. Didn't look funny. Definitely not funny the third time. Damn, I wish I was a gangsta." Well, Throg, you know what I have to tell you? I liked Goldmember better than The Spy Who Shagged Me. I do. Lancelot Narian sends in a tip and says, "Been reading your tweets. The most powerful and self-empowering thing you can do is simply walk away with your head held high. You do not deserve any of the shit you're being dealt. You have more talent in your little finger than all of them collectively." Yeah, well, look, that's very nice of you to say. My problem is I'm happy to walk away, but I need people to when things go on and that continue to be problematic, not from my side, and I get asked about it, I really am in a place where I don't know what I'm supposed to say. And yesterday was not good as far as that was concerned. And I just want, I get pissed off. I get pissed off because you can't have your cake and eat it too. You got to pick a side, and you've got to stick to that side. That's what I've always believed. And if your side is wrong, then you acknowledge it and you move on. But when somebody is wronged and then is asked to protect that side that continues to wrong them, then it gets a little weird. Jeffrey Mao sends in a tip and says, Blues Brothers should be Antifa's wet dream. Running Nazis off a bridge, cops shown as buffoons using excessive and unnecessary violence to capture the Blues Brothers, yet I'm sure they would find it problematic that white writers, directors, and stars I don't see the answer, Jeff. I'll have to come back to that. Look, as many people say, what is Antifa? Like, Paul from Long Beach would tell you it's a myth. It doesn't really exist. I don't know. People identify with there's no Antifa. Can I go to Antifa headquarters? I don't think so. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of people saying a lot of things on every side. I just, let's go back to being excellent to one another. That's what I would say. Willow's here. Willow says, do you think Godzilla versus Kong will have a definitive winner for the fight? Godzilla, you're letting him kill Mothra. Kong, why did you say that name? That's funny. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if they can. I don't know, Willow. I mean, what's really interesting is that Godzilla and Kong are like different kinds of people. And on one hand, I love Godzilla, so my first inclination is Team Godzilla. But I kind of think that it's going to be Kong, who is just like, at the end, is going to be like, they're fighting, and I would think at the end of the movie, they have to team up against someone else. Don't they? I mean, and also it's going to be Kong who's going to be the moderator, the mediator. Because, Godzilla represents more like the prime, like Kong is an individual. Whereas Godzilla pretty much doesn't he, she, it represent the planet, more of a force of nature. Whereas Kong is like, look, she's like Howard the Duck trapped in a world he never made. So I always think that Kong's more of an intellectual. So I think at the end of the day, he's going to be like, bruh, why are we fighting? We need to team up and like do something good for the world. So I think that there's going to be no clear victor. I think they're going to fight to a standstill and team up against somebody else. Factual Opinion sends in a tip and says, my favorite Deep Space Nine episode is Duet, the penultimate episode of the first season. And for season 2 is the Jem'Hadar, which is the final episode of season 2. The Jem'Hadar is when the starship, the Enterprise D, her sister ship, the Odyssey, gets kamikazed by the Jem'Hadar. They crash into destroy. It's shocking. Completely shocking. The true outbreak of the Dominion War. Great episode. I agree. Kendiana Jones is here and says, I got up today and watched Deep Space Nine's Far Beyond the Stars for the first time in years. Both amazing and sad that it still resonates so much. I get a lump in my throat every time Benny Russell falls to the floor in tears. Avery Brooks is incredible. He also directed that episode. Yeah, I think I would, even if you've never seen Deep Space Nine or haven't watched Star Trek or it isn't your thing, I implore everyone who wants to make sense of these times or who wants to know why Black Lives Matter, why does that movement exist, watch Far Beyond the Stars, which directly deals with the kind of racism that we've never gotten rid of in this country. And it's an incredible episode of Star Trek, and it's just an incredible episode of television. So that's amazing. Lancelot Narian sends in a tip and says, happy birthday, Malcolm McDowell. I recorded the DVD audio commentary for If with Malcolm McDowell. Did you really? It is on the Criterion disc? Wow, I love Lindsay Anderson's If. And I've actually met Malcolm McDowell a few times, and I've sat down with him for actually hours, and I had long conversations with him about Lindsay Anderson. And I got to listen to that commentary. I own that Blu-ray. After the session, the conversation turned to Generations. I wish I could divulge the content of that conflab. Hey, come on, man. Come on, you don't have to tell me here, but tell me offline. Please, I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. Because time is the fire, after all, in which we burn. Kobus sends in a super chat and says, these all sound very unnutritious cereals. I'm happy with plain old cornflakes. Me too. I got to tell you, I was never really a breakfast cereal guy. My favorite breakfast cereal of all time are Frosted Mini Wheats. Not mini ones, but the big Frosted Mini Wheats, and I never ate them as cereal because once you pour milk over them, they get soggy very quickly, which I couldn't stand. But the best way to eat Frosted Mini Wheats, for those of you who are in the know, is because Frosted Mini Wheats soak up milk so quickly. What's awesome is you treat them like they're cookies. And you take the Frosted Mini Wheats out, and you get a big, tall, frosty, like I love my beverages really cold. And then you dip the Frosted Mini Wheats just a little, just dip it in, good dip. And you don't want to fling it out because you don't want little droplets of milk to fly all over the place. And it's hard to get the mini wheat to your mouth before it dribbles. So you got to be careful. So I would usually have the glass of milk, and then you'd dip it in, and you'd eat it right away. And it was great because it was soaked with milk. Another problem, though, with Frosted Mini Wheats is sometimes if you have a glass of milk that's tall, you drink enough or you have enough milk that it gets to the point where you can't get your hand all the way down into the glass. Talk about the ridiculous problems. All of you are probably sitting there going, "Oh my God, Rob, too much information. We don't need to know this about you at all." But it's true. I mean, if you want to know how to properly have Frosted Mini Wheats, that's how to have Frosted Mini Wheats. I'm just saying. And maybe one day if I ever write the book of my life, which, by the way, the title of my book is Another Nameless Director and a Shameless Act of Self-Promotion. That's the name of my autobiography, based on a picture that was taken of me at the Cannes Film Festival. So there you go. And I definitely would devote a few pages to the proper way to eat Frosted Mini Wheats. I love Frosted Mini Wheats. I still do. But nowadays, they all come in the little square, like it's hard to find the big ones anymore. And another thing, I'll tell you something else if you really want to get into my dissertation on Frosted Mini Wheats. I was always disappointed when, they're like potato chips. If you get the big boxes of Frosted Mini Wheats, you never get the box up front. You try and get the box in the middle, because if Frosted Mini Wheats are jostled too much, they break in half, and that's always disappointing. It was always disappointing because if they're broken in half, you can't get the big bite with the milk in it. I know, right? I know. Yeah. Anyway, Nicholas Glenn sends in a chat and it says, "Thoughts on Seattle? What do you think should be done?" You mean because they blew up the UA 150 theater in 2002? I know what you mean. I find what's going on in Seattle interesting, and like I said, I on Twitter I was like, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. And I've been a little flippant about all of it. My whole thing is this: when you have, even if you're peaceful protesters, right, whoever you are, when you go in and then declare part of an American city, I mean, the Capitol Hill Chaz, the Capitol Hill autonomous zone, or hashtag Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. Now I understand it's peaceful, it's an art collective and all these things. They're still going into a section of a city that exists because of the surrounding infrastructure, the roads, the sidewalks. You have businesses there, you have residents that live in apartments that are inside the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And were any of those people consulted? Do they have a voice? And are the people that are in the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, are they then going to take care of all the infrastructure do they plan on staying there for a long time? And I think it's sort of, in a way, in the long run, it would have been much more interesting if all of those people who are in the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, if they found a place, like, I want to see if people want to build alternative communities, they should go do that. But I think that by doing that in the middle of a city, in the middle of neighborhoods, in the middle of Capitol Hill, remember, I'm from Seattle, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, with Pine Street, it comes right by the Egyptian Theater where the Seattle International Film Festival was. So there's a lot that they're taking advantage of, I think. And it would be interesting, like, does that mean, I guess they're going to have to pay for their cell phone service still, and electricity, and who's, cleanup and sanitation and all that. I think that it's problematic. I like, in fact, okay, so I saw on Twitter yesterday, there was a guy who had drone footage of the artwork that they'd painted on the street, the Black Lives Matter artwork. Beautiful artwork, really well done. They were now licensing that footage. They had this drone footage, and like, if you would like to license this for your new show or whatever, please support the artists here or license the footage here. And I'm like, okay, does anything go to the city who makes sure that the street where you painted your art exists? I think that, like a lot of things, it wasn't thought all the way through. And but I mean, I support peaceful protests of all kinds. But I think what they're doing is something different. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. So, yeah, Nicholas, I don't know. What do you guys think? I honestly, I don't know. Pierre Fillion sends in a super chat and says, I am a salesman for AHA Water. Glad you enjoy it. Well, let me tell you, Pierre, I've only had this AHA water, and I gotta say, I was in the supermarket, I was with Elizabeth, and we're going down this aisle. I don't normally necessarily look for sparkling water, and I just saw this, and I was like, coffee and black cherry just sounded delightful. And it was funny, so we go in the car, we sit down, and we had to try it. So and it was funny, because Elizabeth took the first sip. And you could see on her face, she's like, and then she drew out, she gave me a little dramatic pause, and she was like, this is so good. And it is delightful. I mean, I love black cherry soda anyway, but there's caffeine in this, and the coffee flavor is not overwhelming, but it's there. Whoever thought to put black cherry and coffee together? Well, let me tell you, Pierre, if there's anything I could do to help promote this deliciousness across our planet, I'm happy to do it. Because, man, it's good stuff. Phage Lives sends in a super chat and says, oh my God, you done the Hills Run Red? Oh my God, squee! I know, it's funny. I did. We did. Dave Park and I did. It took us 3 years of our lives from start to finish on that project. And, I mean, a lot of other people came along for the ride, obviously, but, yeah, we did. And, if I hadn't, you know what? If anybody doesn't know, on Tuesday, The Hills Run Red comes out on Blu-ray from Scream Factory. And if you ever wanted to know how a low-budget horror film gets produced, the entire story of how the movie was made, 3 commentaries over there must be like 4 hours of behind-the-scenes documentaries. I did all the interviews originally that you saw, but they're not just interviews, they're behind-the-scenes pieces too. You really get a sense. I mean, not a lot of quick cuts. It's more like you are there, fly on the wall stuff that people like. That's what I like to specialize in. And yeah, so there you go. I hope you like the disc. Stubble McShave. Wait, I went back to the wrong. I went back to the wrong thing. Stubble McShave is here, and he says the Black Lives Matter protests are an important means for change. Absolutely agree. There's been an alarming trend of censorship the last few years. Freedom of speech is very important. I don't agree with Christopher Hitchens all the time, but his speech about it is great. Ooh, you know what? I, too, don't agree with Christopher Hitchens a lot of the time, but I really like him. I liked watching him. Here you go. Any speech, I will watch any speech he gives. Yes, I think that Black Lives Matter are very important. I think the idea of them... the idea of the movement, I should say, is extremely important, and for the most part, I think they've stayed on point, and it's an important point. And by the way, I don't understand when people say all lives matter. Of course, all lives matter, but you know what? The Black Lives Matter movement is something that we haven't dealt with in 400 years. If we were a little bit more tolerant and better in dealing with the certain, again. Why is the water in Flint, Michigan not fixed? Why isn't it clean yet? Mark C. sends in a super chat. Hello, Mark C. I see irony in that most celebrated law enforcement official in history is U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves. Is it Bass Reeves? Who captured 3,000 felons. Reeves was a black man, and police should revere him as almost a god. Mark, I have to say that my knowledge of history about this topic is... lax. So, since you're asking, let's see. Bass Reeves. I'm going to look him up. Here's what Wikipedia says. Wow, this is interesting. How very interesting. This is amazing. Okay. Bass Reeves, is it Bass Reeves or Bass Reeves? I don't know. It's B-A-S-S. Was an American law enforcement officer. He was the first black deputy U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi River. Wow. He worked mostly in Arkansas and Oklahoma Territory. During his long career, he was credited with arresting more than 3,000 felons. He shot and killed 14 people in self-defense. He was born into slavery. Wow. Oh, man. Reeves himself was once charged with murdering a posse cook. At his trial before Judge Parker, Reeves was represented by former United States Attorney W.H.H. Clayton, who was a colleague and a friend, and Reeves was acquitted. Wow. That's amazing. Oh, historian Art Burton postulated the theory that Bass Reeves, or Bass, I don't know, I feel bad if I'm saying it wrong. Bass Reeves may have served as the inspiration for the character of the Lone Ranger. Burton makes this argument based on the sheer number of people Reeves arrested without taking any serious injury, coupled with many of these arrested were incarcerated in the Detroit House of Correction, the same city where the Lone Ranger radio plays were broadcast. This theory is disputed. Wow, now I want to see a story. I want to see a movie about him. Amazing. That is ironic. What a cool story that is. A Twin Flicks is here and says, I'm a big Star Trek fan. But playing devil's advocate, if they wanted to revamp Star Trek for modern audiences, then I guess that's a way to do it, creating an alternate timeline. But why not do it smartly and still hold on to Roddenberry's vision? I'll never understand it. I'll tell you something, man. I don't know. I have no idea. I really do not know. It makes little sense to me. But yeah, I don't. They want, my problem with Star Trek now is that Star Trek used to be sort of timeless. They were espousing these virtues and these things that were sort of timeless in terms of what they mean to humanity. And now everything seems so. I think the new Star Trek shows they're so already dated because they're not going after these concepts, these timeless concepts. They're treating everything like it's of today. Like they want to make. We'll call it woke, whatever you want to call it. But like I've said, the idea that the people in Star Trek, to me, were always the perfect, not the perfect, but the people you aspire to. They were part of the elite. They were the top 1% of humanity. You had to be the best of the best to be on a Federation starship. That's part of the appeal of the show. Spock was not somebody who ever suffered a learning disability. He had to be better than both his human half and his Vulcan half, so he was the best he could possibly be. And by saddling the character with a learning disability, because everybody has to be able to identify with Spock. No! You identify with the character of Spock because he understood he was a person of two worlds, and he had to reconcile those two worlds. And, he had to be better than the average Vulcan. And, of course, he denied his human side. And over the course of Star Trek, we watched him come to grips. Star Trek the Motion Picture is all about Spock recognizing his human side and understanding the value of emotion. This simple feeling is beyond V'ger's comprehension. But giving him a learning disability and all that, you completely diminish the character. You make him ordinary. Because let's have our audience needs to identify more with Spock, as if the last 50 years they haven't. So let's saddle him with a learning disability so people can go, I have a learning disability too. No, man, Spock does not have a learning disability. No, he doesn't. But anyway, pardon me, he does now. It's canonical, he does. Hate that. Me, Viewer 2, sends in a super chat and says, keep it up, bro. Well, me, Reviewer, I will keep it up. Kaz Graphics is here. Kaz Graphics says, I just watched Spike Lee's Da 5 Bloods. You're the first person I've heard this from that I know that, we don't know, but we know. I feel we know each other. Oh my God, it's fantastic. I think it's his masterpiece. We park our shuttlecrafts in the same place. Trust me, this movie is straight up your alley. Everything about this. First of all, I love Spike Lee as a filmmaker. I first saw She's Gotta Have It. And please, baby, please. I love that movie. And I like School Days a lot. And of course, when you get to Do the Right Thing, I mean, come on. That's just a masterpiece. And also when he's like Inside Job with Clive Owen, the bank robbery movie, that movie's fantastic. So when I heard, I didn't know what this movie was about. It kind of came out of nowhere because I didn't really pay attention to it, and especially following up Black Klansman. I mean, I can't wait, Kaz. I cannot wait to see this movie. And the cast, my God, can't wait. I'm really glad. I hope, from what everyone's told me, if there's going to be an Academy Awards this year, I would love to see Spike Lee win the, straight up win Best Director and maybe a Best Picture award. If this is his masterpiece, I think that's great. So that is so good. And you and I do park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay, so I trust you implicitly. Koba is here, and Koba says, Kong wins in the American theaters, Godzilla wins in the Japanese theaters. I'll take that. I'll take that, Koba. And you would know, because you're our favorite simian. But who are you going to vote for? Come on, there's only one winner for you, isn't there? Only one winner. You know there is. Stubble McShave says, what is your favorite example of a movie referencing another movie? For me, it's probably in The Naked Gun, where they walked out of a showing of Platoon laughing. I'll tell you what. There's two. One of them, actually, I think my favorite of all time. If you're a fan of Animal House, I love Animal House. I love it. It was one of the first pre-recorded video cassettes I've had. Another movie I can recite back and forth. Well, at the end, you find out what happens to the characters. And one of the characters, Niedermeyer, the movie Niedermeyer, who's the evil Omega House, sort of the viceroy of Omega House who works for Greg. It says that Niedermeyer was killed in Vietnam by his own troops. That's what it says in the end of the movie. So in 1982, when they made Twilight Zone the movie, in John Landis' segment, John Landis directed Animal House. He also directed his ill-fated segment of Twilight Zone the movie. But there's this Vietnam flashback, and you see this platoon kind of going through the water with their guns, and one of the Hispanic members goes, I told you guys we shouldn't have shot Lieutenant Niedermeyer. And I lost it in the theater. I mean, obviously Landis was referencing his own movie, but I thought it was so great. I thought it was so great that they did that. And my other favorite one is in Stakeout, when Emilio Estevez and Richard Dreyfuss are like talking. It's been so long since I've seen it, and they're doing like movie lines or quotes, and Emilio Estevez says, "This was no boating accident," and Richard Dreyfuss I don't know, which I just thought was funny. But those are my two. Those are the things that jumped into my head. Pope John Throg the First sends in a tip and says, "Hi, still here, not leaving. The two Carmines don't have the internet and want to say hello." First of all, I love that. The two Carmines should be some kind of a movie. And I please say to the Carmines, hello back to them. And it's my honor to speak with them, if only over the internet. I look forward to making your acquaintance. Let's break bread or have some Chianti. Jeffrey Mao's here, and he says, part 2 must not have gone through. I was saying the Blues Brothers would have been accused of cultural appropriation because of its white writers, directors, and stars. That's BS. No better film to show integration between white and black music and who's who cast. I love the Blues Brothers for that reason. I mean, I'm a huge fan of blues. I love jazz. I mean, it was great. The musical stuff in that movie is terrific. But yeah, now would be weird. Honest Asian Guy says, "Hi Rob, what are your thoughts on China's influence on the film industry? Suddenly there are no criminals or spies or hackers or non-patriotic citizens in China, and all Asian villains are from Western countries. I bet when a COVID-19 film, that is, did you go on and is released, the virus will have originated in Taiwan or Hong Kong instead. Thanks and have a great weekend." Well, Honest Asian Guy, you're right about that. But here's the thing. On one hand, like in Ridley Scott's The Martian, the Chinese come to the rescue. And I love that. I love all the scenes in China with the Chinese coming and the Chinese, the woman who runs their space agency. I mean, come on, hubba hubba. But I look, we live in a world where the Chinese market is hugely important. They've financed and they've invested in a lot of movies. The real problem, again, it's a problem that right now, will human rights abuses. They're a communist country, and they're stealing our IP. They're doing all kinds of underhanded things, but they sure are helpful when it comes to manufacturing stuff. So it's here's the time to really step up and take a stand, but we don't. So on one hand, I'm a huge fan of Chinese culture. I love Chinese actors. I've often said that if I was Asian, I would be like my man Tony Leung. I love him. I love that guy, and I'm so excited that he's going to be in Shang-Chi. But I loved him in the first time I saw him was in John Woo's Hard Boiled, but then in The Mood for Love, which we did an episode of Liz Views on. I mean, I love Chinese culture and all that, but we have a communist government that does not have our best interests at heart, even though we're in sort of this weird symbiotic relationship with them. So from that end, overall, I would say I do have a problem with it, and I think it's wrong that we placate them by absolving them of all the things that we disagree with. But remember, we're perfectly willing to take their money. You know, we'll compromise our own beliefs because we want that Chinese cash. And therein there's the big dichotomy. Not dichotomy, there's what's the word I want? I forget. But there's the big problem with our modern age. All of our platitudes and all of our beliefs and everything goes out the window if there's cash involved. Cash always trumps everything else. And, you know, it's really easy to stand up for the rights of things until you have to pay, give me money. And I think that's the real problem with our entire system, is that ultimately capitalism can be perverted, and our entire systems of government can be perverted because we'll always take the cash. People will always take the money. Human life is finite. I want to get mine. I want to live in the lap of luxury. Hey man, somebody came to me and asked me to compromise my beliefs in some way and said, and we'll pay you $100 million to do it. What you're going to then outweigh, you're going to weigh between, okay, if I had $100 million right now, I could make movies for the rest of my life. I could take care of my family for the rest of my life. I could do everything I wanted. I would just have to compromise my beliefs this one time. I mean, what do you do? What do you do? So it's a tough one. Mark C sends in another super chat. Here's how you handle Chaz. Cut the power and water. Those belong to the U.S. If they want them back, they can pay international tariff rates. Yeah, dude, I feel the same way about that. It's like, here, you leave the United States. It's like the United States was here already with all of this infrastructure, so then you could grow up and be the way you are, and you're able to go protest, and then you just decide that that this section of the city, did you vote on it? You just decide, nope, we're taking this over. To me, I'm like, I don't know, problematic. I'm with you. Evan Newman says, ding, ding, it's back. Another round of take one, leave one. Oh, Evan, these are tough. Today is a 1999 double hitter, Fight Club versus The Matrix. Both have been discussed recently on your show and were influential films. So which will you save, Rob? Tyler Durden or Neo? You know what? The Matrix. That's not a tough one for me. The Matrix has more universal themes, whereas, and I think it'll age better, Fight Club is definitely going to end up being a product of its time. I love Fight Club. I really do. But I like The Matrix more. I think The Matrix is more influential in the long run in terms of filmmaking. But they're both great. It's a great choice. Anthony Gonzalez sends in a tip and says, you ever play any of the Starfleet Command PC games? I have not. Those get me sucked in. Also, why isn't The Keep on Blu-ray? I love The Keep. And first of all, I haven't played those Starfleet games, but I would probably play them. The Keep is very... I went and saw Michael Mann speak after a screening. They did a double bill at the Arrow, and I went with my friend Adrian, and we went and saw Thief and To Live and Die in L.A. And Michael Mann spoke, and I actually asked him the question about The Keep. I said, would you ever go back and revisit The Keep? He does not like the film. Like, really doesn't like the film. And his excuse was a lot of the visual effects that were done and the physical effects, they weren't what he'd wanted, and he just doesn't like the movie. And it's come out in various formats. I mean, you can find obviously DVDs, but I don't know if they'll ever go back and do a Blu-ray. Maybe he's not. Maybe Michael Mann's actually blocking it. I don't know. I don't know. But it's a very good question. I have the Laserdisc. I should just burn it. Hassan is here. Hello, Mike. Can I say it? Come on. I don't. Hello. I'm just gonna say it. Hello, my gringo. Why are you looking for trouble? You get on my nerves sometimes. Anyway, do you have plans for the Captain? I'd like to see him reviewing bad movies or great movies he thinks are bad. Hassan, you know what? I have never thought about keeping that character going. I've never thought about that before. I would say probably not. For those of you who don't know, the Captain is a character that I've been portraying on the Schmodown. I would say that while I never signed any contracts to this effect, I would say that the Schmodown owns my portrayal of that character. And I have no problem with that. It was a character that was created because of my involvement with the Schmodown. Now, that doesn't mean I would have to go to the Schmodown and say, hey, can I do something with this character? Because it would still be linked to the Schmodown. So I would say, in deference to the Schmodown, and to be fair, it was something that I created because of the Schmodown. So I don't think I could do anything without their permission. But I never thought about that before. I can't believe I never thought about that. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, but what do you think? I mean, I like those ideas. I think that would be very funny. Although, already I think I got into trouble with my own compatriots there because people believe that character was me. I mean, it was me, but it wasn't. The character was didn't espouse necessarily my beliefs. Jet Screamer sends in a tip and says, I loved in Look Who's Talking when Olympia asked Travolta if your friends jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge. Saturday Night Fever is a classic. As a movie reference, Jet Screamer, yes. Gosh, I never thought about that. That's really funny. That's a really good one. So anybody who in Saturday Night Fever, somebody does indeed jump off a bridge. I didn't know that, Jet Screamer. That's a really good one for inter-movie references. Good call. Good call. Lancelot Narian sends in a tip and says, Star Trek 3 was on TV today in the UK. Am I right in that you don't like it? Man, it's so good. Jim loses his past and his possible future. His son, all he's left with is what's in front of him. What an existential crisis. That's a great way to look at that movie. I would go into this longer, but we actually did I would go listen to the episode of Inglorious Trexperts that we did on Star Trek 3. But I have problems with mostly its production and direction. And the original story I thought was much more adult. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, I'm doing a Zoom party today. There's a couple of change of plans. Elizabeth has to work, so she is not going to do the Zoom party today. She can't. I, however, am going to do the Zoom party. And I'm going to do it at 2 o'clock. I got to check in with Roberto Suarez. And so we're just going to, hang out. All of you, we did it before on Zoom. It was a lot of fun. I did it for my birthday. And I'm just going to hang out today. And we are not going to do whining about movies today. We'll probably do it tomorrow. But we're not doing whining about movies, mostly because now that work has opened up for Elizabeth, she's got a lot of clients she's having to deal with, so we just don't have time. But yeah, so we're gonna in 20 minutes we'll have a Zoom party. So all of you are invited. I don't know where we can post. Hey, the Richard, Where can people get this link? Do we have the Zoom link? Maybe Roberto sent it to me. I'm going to see. He might have. He might have done that very thing. No, I don't see it there. Let me check again. Dan Skip Allen. Oh no. I just realized. Hang on a second. Check that out. So I don't know. I guess he hasn't sent it to me. Oh, I have it. Yes, I have it. Let me see. I don't think I do. Oh, wait. I'm looking. Well, anyway, let me get offline and talk to Richard. I'm going to jump off, but I'm going to bring this episode of Robservations to an end. Once again, I want to thank my moderating staff. Of course, the Richard and Haynock is new. And, Lamont Smalls sent in a super chat and says, with Tenet, Wonder Woman, and other WB movies getting moved, and the possible thought of Mulan could go to premium VOD, not Disney, your thoughts on how it could affect the Oscars, if there is one? Ooh, good question, Lamont. I think that we're going to see the Oscars are going to have to take all of this into consideration and find out what it is that we're going to do. And I think they're going to have to. I think they'll all count. They're going to have to figure out something. The rules are going to. I mean, I know they're changing rules and things, but it's very interesting. I just can't. Mulan's just too expensive. I just can't think. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think they could put that movie on VOD. I mean, they need it to make $1 billion to break even. We'll see. And with China's theaters, Beijing not opening their theaters, that's a big deal. So, we shall see. Yeah, I don't know. But back to that, I just want to say my moderating staff, I want to thank everybody for being a part of that. Mike Bodden. Detective Jim has stepped away for a while. Hopefully he'll come back at some point. But he's stepped away as well. So wish him and Heidi the best. They're great, great people. And we'll see. So the Zoom party will start in 15 minutes. And, yeah, we'll do that. So it's going to happen. I was just hoping I would be able to get the link in here somewhere. But we'll put it on the Facebook page. I'll tweet it out or something like that. But yes, thanks to everybody who makes the show go on. I want to thank all of the people that support the show and write letters. Again, if you want to write me letters or send me videos, and I will play them, but you have to I only ask that you be respectful to the members of the Post-Geek Singularity community in what you choose to write and how you choose to write it. And go to the Burnettwork.net, my website, and you can send me videos and you can send me letters. And please do so. Now remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, I will be back tomorrow, by the way, but I'm going to see you in 15 minutes. As always, have a better day.